back to Addie's Reading Adventures. Today we get to start our new chapter book series, and as you can tell, the book we will be reading is called A Piglet called Truffle. So yeah, let's get into reading this amazing book. A Piglet called Truffle. So this is the map of kind of, everything. So there's like chicken coop, farmyard, yeah, all that. And then to Mrs. Thomas's house in Angus Midden Farm up there. All right, let's go. Jasmine Green rescues a piglet called Truffle. Chapter 1. You poor little thing. Jasmine was lying on her bed with her cats, reading her favorite magazine, Practical Pigs. It was a Friday afternoon in late November, and Jasmine, absorbed in an interesting article about rare breeds, was completely happy. Jasmine called her mom up the stairs. I have to go to a calving at Carter's. Do you want to come? Jasmine swung her feet to the floor. Mr. Carter was a grumpy old farmer with a permanent scowl on his face, but he kept pigs, and that was the reason enough to visit his farm. Jasmine's dad was a farmer too, and he kept plenty of calves. But despite Jasmine's constant pleading, there was no pigs at Oak Tree Farm. I'll be back soon, Jasmine murmured to her cats, stroking the tops of their heads. Have a lovely sleep. Marmot purred as Jasmine stroked her thick black fur. Toffee lay curled up on a blanket at the end of a bed and didn't open his eyes as Jasmine left the room. Jasmine's mom, Nadia, was standing at the bottom of the stairs in her coat and boots, jingling her keys like she always did when she was impatient. Come on, Jas, grab your coat, I need to go. As a farm vet, Mom often got called out on inconvenient times. Jasmine sometimes thought farmers purposely waited until meal times to make their emergency phone calls to the vet. Jasmine pulled her muddy waterproof jacket from its hook by the Aga stove in the kitchen. Her older sister Ella sat at the kitchen table frowning over a textbook. The table was covered with school books and files and scraps of papers and pens. We shouldn't be too long, Mom said to Ella. I put some baked potatoes in the Aga. Uh-oh, said Ella vaguely. She didn't look up from her books. Jasmine and Mom walked out onto the front of the garden, past the kennel where Bramble, the old Springer Spaniel, lived. The kennel almost always made Jasmine sad these days until last month. There had been 2 dogs living there, but Bramble's sister, Bracken, had died of old age a month ago, and Bramble was on her own. It must be so strange and lonely for her, Jasmine thought. At the moment, the kennel was empty. Bramble was out in the fields with Jasmine's dad. This is the little picture. Mom opened the gate. Manu, Ben, I'm going out on a call. She hollered into the tangle of the bushes at the end of the farmyard. There was a rustling noise, and 2 mud-smeared faces poked out through the damp twigs. One belonged to Jasmine's 5-year-old brother, Manu, and the other to his best friend, Ben, who lived in the house at the end of the farm road. Do you want some of our crumble? Asked Manu. He thrust a plastic tub through the leaves. What sort of crumble? Asked Mom. Jasmine peered into the tub. Mud crumble, it looked like, with a crunchy, dead leaf topping. It's got berries and acorns in it too, said Ben. It's dying crumble, said Manu. Dying crumble? Asked Mom. Yes, said Manu. If you eat it, you die. It sounds lovely, said Mom, but I'll pass. Daddy's checking the sheep in the 13 acres, and Ella's inside if you need anything. Okay, said Manu. Thank you, Dr. Zai, said Ben. He was always super polite to adults. That was how he always got away with being so naughty. And don't eat that crumble, called Mom. No, Dr. Sai, we won't, said Ben. Thank you, Dr. Sai. Bye, Dr. Sai. And their heads disappeared back into the bushes. Mr. Carter appeared from a cowshed as they drove into the farmyard. He was a stocky, middle-aged man in a dirty waterproof coat and baggy overalls. Tucked into enormous black boots, as always, he had a scowl on his face. Afternoon, Jim, said Mom, getting out of the car. Mr. Carter didn't return the greeting. Breech birth, I reckon, he grunted as Mom opened the trunk of the car and took out her case of medicine and equipment. Been straining for hours. Can I go see the pigs? Asked Jasmine. Mr. Carter gave a grunt, which Jasmine took as a yes. She was halfway across the yard when he called, "There's a sow just for 11 she's had." Jasmine gave a squeal of delight. "Newborn piglets? Watch out for that old sow, though," called the farmer. "And disinfect your boots first," said Mom. "Here," she said, taking from the trunk a plastic bucket containing a bottle of disinfectant and a scrubbing brush. Jasmine took the bucket and filled it with it from the top tap in the milking parlor. She poured disinfectant in and carried the bucket back to the yard and handed the scrubbing brush to her mother. Mom scrubbed her boots and passed the brush to Jasmine, who did the same. It was one of those boring jobs that had to be done, like brushing your teeth. "We can't risk spreading infections between farms," Mom always said. Now that her boots were thoroughly disinfected, Jasmine splashed through the muddy puddles in the pig sties. Every sty had a stable door. The bottom halves were bolted shut, but the top halves were open. Jasmine leaned over the top of the door first in sty and peered in. It was empty. The second sty contained one old sow lying asleep on a pile of straw, but there were rustling and grunting noises coming from the third one. Jasmine looked in. A sleek pig lay on her side in a bed of straw, sucking busily at her long, double line of teats. Teats was a row of silky little newborn piglets, pink with black splotches. Their tiny curly tails wriggled with delight as they drank their mother's milk. Jasmine grinned at the scene. "You," she said to the piglets, "are so lovely, and you," she told the sow, "are very clever." Even though Mr. Carter had already told her there were 11 piglets, Jasmine couldn't resist counting the row of little bodies packed tightly together. Yes, there were 11. But then something caught her attention. At the far end of the row, from beneath the biggest and fattest piglet in the litter, there was a movement in the straw, a wrestling sort of movement. Was it a mouse? This is the picture. Jasmine looked more closely. There was another movement, and she saw a little patch of pink beneath the straw. Jasmine tugged at the bolt on the sty door. It didn't budge. She wriggled and pulled and gradually inched it back, until with a final jerk it came free. She stepped inside the sty and leaned over the door to bolt it shut again. The pigs didn't look like they were planning to escape, but you can never be so sure. "It's all right," Jasmine reassured the sow. "I've just come to look." Slowly and quietly, so as not to disturb the feeding babies or alarm the new mother, she crept along the road to where the biggest piglet was feeding. Tucked in just in front of the sow's hind legs, yes, there's definitely something underneath it, almost buried in the straw. Jasmine crouched down. Gently, she lifted the warm, soft body of the biggest piglet. It squealed indignantly, and the mother raised her head and bared her yellow teeth with a low growl. Jasmine hastily laid the piglet next to another teat. The low sow laid down her head again, alarm over. Jasmine gently parted the straw where the big piglet had been lying. There, shivering convulsively, lay the smallest piglet Jasmine had ever seen. It was about half the size of the others, and not much bigger than Jasmine's hand. It clearly didn't have the strength to push its way through its brothers and sisters to get a drink. "Oh," she said, "oh, you poor little thing." She scooped up the trembling runt, feeling the bones beneath its thin skin. It didn't make a sound. She picked off the pieces of straw from around its mouth and snout and laid it gently in front of a free teat. Its wet little snout was touching the teat, but the piglet didn't open its mouth. Its tiny tail hung limp and straight. It must be too weak to feed, she thought. She had to tell Mr. Carter straight away. He said there were 11 piglets, so he hadn't seen the runt. "Don't worry," she murmured to the tiny pig. "I'm going to get help." All right, that is the end of chapter 1. If you guys are liking this book, stay tuned for next Friday when another chapter will be coming out. If you guys do want me to read more chapter books and more often, then definitely give this video a thumbs up, and maybe I'll add more days to my schedule so we can read more of this. But yes, come back for chapter 2 next Friday, and yeah, see you guys next week. Bye, guys!